MPs are now in hour 23, as you heard that right, 23 of a marathon voting session. It's a pressure tactic triggered by the Conservatives. They want Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott to be able to speak freely about the SNC-Lavalin controversy, as Katie was saying. All of the votes are technically votes of confidence, so the Liberals need their majority in the seats to ensure the government doesn't fall, and the votes could stretch into the wee hours of the morning. But we managed to wrangle 3 of those MPs out of their seats to join us for a discussion. Marco Mendicino is Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Infrastructure. Candice Bergen is the Conservative House Leader. And Daniel Blaikie is the NDP's Treasury Board Critic. Hi to all 3 of you. Thanks for your time.
Hi, Vashi, and very bright-eyed.
You all look very wide awake. I appreciate that.
Visine.
Visine, I know the trick well. Mr. Mendicino, I'm going to start with you. Your Liberal colleagues, as we just heard, Judy Sgro, for example, have said that if Ms. Philpott or Ms. Wilson-Raybould have more to say, they're free to do so in the House under parliamentary privilege. But why won't your government just get out in front of this and extend the waiver? If there's nothing to hide, why not just do that so that she could speak, Ms. Wilson-Raybould, about the day she resigned, and Ms. Philpott could address the breadth of information she says she wants to in that Maclean's article this morning?
Well, the mere fact that we issued a waiver in the first place was extraordinary. It's been done very sparingly, and it did allow Ms. Wilson-Raybould to appear before the Justice Committee. The Justice Committee sat for 5 weeks. It heard from multiple witnesses. I think Canadians are better off for knowing much more about the SNC affair, and they will come to their own judgment. And with regards to Ms. Sgro and Mr. McKay, both of whom are not only good colleagues, but good friends and mentors, because they have been in this chamber for far longer than I have. This is part of a very strong team, and I echo what the Prime Minister said about doing politics differently. This is a party that embraces different views. We argue vociferously and fearlessly. That's a good thing because we're making big decisions when it comes to the caucus and as well when it comes to cabinet. We also trust each other, and that's an important principle when it comes to building the strength of this team.
You trust Jane Philpott and you trust Jody Wilson-Raybould?
I respect both of them. I respect both of them, and I have every reason to trust the work that they have done and respect the work that they have done because I've worked with Ms. Philpott and I've worked with Ms. Wilson-Raybould, and obviously it's a choice for them now to remain in caucus. The silver lining, as I have said, is that we continue to have a dialogue. Again, that is something that the caucus will continue to have dialogue. But in the meantime, over the last number of days, what we have seen in this chamber is
we'll get to that, Mr. Mendicino, but my questions were
a departure from an
Mr. Mendicino, I understand that. We'll get there, but my questions were very specific. On the first, on the first of why you don't extend the waiver, you just said that because it was unprecedented. I mean, could you not just fully extend it? And you didn't also answer whether you trust them or not.
What I said with regards to the waiver is that it has been issued on a very sparing basis. That's because it promotes good debates both within cabinet and within caucus, and we should not depart from those legal traditions easily. And with regards to the work, yes, I do trust the members of this caucus. I trust in their work because the work is what matters to Canadians, and we are delivering. We're delivering when it comes to the budget. We're delivering on appropriations, which we've been voting on for the last 23 hours, and which the opposition have been voting against when it comes to things like delivering on veterans services, when it comes to delivering on police and on prosecutors to keep our communities safe, and when it comes to delivering on the environment. Those are all measures which the opposition are voting against, and I think it's shameful.
Ms. Bergen, why is your party voting against those measures?
Well, first of all, Marco didn't want to actually use any actual real words to describe whether he trusts Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott. I can tell you the Prime Minister has basically said that what they have said and what they've relayed are lies and not truths. That's kind of the Prime Minister's way when he says, well, they experienced it differently than I did. We still have a case where, listen, Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott did nothing wrong. So even this notion that somehow they're causing problems in their caucus, I find disgusting to hear from any of these Liberal MPs. This is the Prime Minister who pressured the Attorney General to interfere in a criminal case. There have been 5 resignations, including the Clerk of the Privy Council, the Prime Minister's Chief Advisor, the Attorney General, the President of the Treasury Board, and they are now somehow blaming these 2 women because they've shut them down, not allowed them to tell their full story, and somehow that's these women's fault because there's problems in their caucus.
Ms. Bergen, I think Mr. Mendicino, you didn't answer the question, though. Why is your party against
I'm very happy to answer that. And we've stood up throughout these whole series of votes, and we have said we can wrap this up in 10 minutes very, very easily. But what we are asking the government to do is waive privilege and allow Jody Wilson-Raybould to give her full testimony, not just partial testimony. This goes to the very rule of law, to the heart of our democracy and our justice system. And so we as opposition have got to put pressure on this government. We have seen them Every time they can, they shut down the Justice Committee. We now have this going to the Ethics Committee, and we will be putting every pressure to bear on them at the Ethics Committee so that we can get some answers. But listen, we see these guys believe that they're above the law. It's about who you know. It's about having friends in high places. And in the case of the Prime Minister of the country, putting pressure on the Attorney General, and when she didn't do what he wanted, he fired her, and he has now silenced her.
Mr. Blaikie, we're about to speak with Rob Walsh. I spoke with him earlier this afternoon. The full interview will air later. He's the former law clerk of the House of Commons. He says there is nothing prohibiting Jody Wilson-Raybould or Jane Philpott from standing up in the House or before committee and talking about that period after which Jody Wilson-Raybould was moved out of the Attorney General position. Is this really all on the government?
Well, look, if there's nothing prohibiting them from doing that, then there should be no problem with the cabinet issuing a more extensive order in council that gives them permission, and that would put it beyond all doubt. So obviously there's doubt in the minds of Jane Philpott and Jody Wilson-Raybould. If there is no problem, then the Prime Minister could put their mind at ease and simply issue an extended waiver, and then they wouldn't have to worry about that. I mean, earlier this morning when the story broke from Maclean's, I had my colleague Brian Massey got up and asked for unanimous consent for a public inquiry. That was shut down. So then I got up and asked for unanimous consent to, by April 5th, so to give time for everybody to get their ducks in a row, that the House would convene in a committee of the whole and invite Jane Philpott and Jody Wilson-Raybould to come give their testimony, and government members said no to that. So I mean, on the one hand, we're hearing, oh, well, why don't they just get up and get in the House? Then we actually try to make it so that there's some assigned time and it can be done in an orderly way, and government members are objecting to that. They can't have their cake and eat it too. It's either they want them to get up in the House, in which case the Prime Minister should clear the way and Liberals should assign the time, or they're trying not to have them do that. But it shouldn't be up to these women to decide that they're going to take the risk when there's doubt in their mind about what they can and can't say. If Liberals and the government are adamant that there's no problem with it, well then put their minds at ease, do what needs to be done so that they feel that they're well within their right to go and speak the truth.
Mr. Mendicino, why?
These women did
Let me just ask Mr. Mendicino. I'll get right to you.
Why are they being put in this position? Why isn't the Prime Minister being
Mr. Mendicino, why did your party block what Mr. Blaikie is talking about? Why wouldn't you just allow for that process to unfold and provide the mechanism to hear fully from these two women?
Well, I don't accept that there has been any effort to try and block either Ms. Wilson-Raybould or Ms. Philpott from speaking. They've made statements in public. They've made statements at various times to media. Ms. Wilson-Raybould has appeared before the Justice Committee, where she was permitted to testify before. And as members of Parliament, yes, they do have privilege to rise in the House of Commons, where they are afforded immunity to provide statements, as you've heard some of my colleagues say. So those are questions
very hard to do that, according to Mr. Walsh, though, as well. They have that privilege, but what are they going to stand up for a minute? I mean, to get a full amount of time.
To be fair, I don't presume to speak for Ms. Wilson-Raybould or Ms. Philpott. I don't think my colleagues should, although I think quite often we do hear the opposition putting words in their mouth, and I think that is a disservice to the cause here. And really what should occur is that Ms. Wilson-Raybould and Ms. Philpott will determine when it is they wish to speak next.
They have said that there's more to tell. We just read an interview today in Maclean's magazine where Jane Philpott said there is more to tell. Canadians need to know. There needs to be more information. Jody Wilson-Raybould has said it. This is a government that is acting 100% like they are hiding something. The Prime Minister is very, very concerned about what these women are going to say, and he's moving heaven and earth to ensure they don't say it.
I'm sorry,
is there any mechanism? Hold on,
example.
Mr. Blaikie, is there any mechanism around the sort of the discussion and the debate that we're hearing right now? Is there any other way, do you think, within the confines of Parliament to hear from these two women that doesn't put the onus on them, that doesn't require the waiver being extended? Well,
as I say, I mean, with respect to the waiver, I think it's clear that they have doubt in their mind, and so the only way to really have that removed is for the government to remove it. Normally, for a member of Parliament, the only way you can just pick a topic without it being related to the business before the House is on what's called an SO31 or a member statement. As members of the Liberal caucus, it would be up to the Liberal whip, the same Liberals who shut down the investigation at the Justice Committee, to assign them a member statement.
Those are 1 minute
and they're only
statements.
60 seconds long, and I really don't think that they're going to be able to say what it is they have to say in 60 seconds or less. So I think we have to make an effort as the House of Commons in order to assign that time. If the Justice Committee isn't going to do it, if we're not going to see it happen at other committees, We think that the best way to do it would be with a public inquiry. That's the way you get the full scope and the independence that you need so that there can be some findings at the end. And the problem all along is that, first of all, we had a problem with political tampering or alleged political tampering within the judicial system, and which frustrated the independence of that system. Then we had similar issues of independence at the Justice Committee, where a Liberal majority was deciding the process. So we need to get this out of the hands of the Liberals. I think that's a very, very fair thing.
I'm out of time. Just quickly, Mr. Mendicino, and then I'm out of time. Yeah.
What I would say is that the Justice Committee's done significant work, and Canadians are better off for knowing what occurred over the last number of months. And what we've seen over the past week is more of the status quo when it comes to cynical politics. You had the opposition shout down the finance minister on the budget day.
What your government is doing is extremely cynical.
It was highly disrespectful. The Conservatives don't want to debate the budget because they don't have a plan when it comes to the environment. They don't have a plan when it comes to the economy.
I can't understand what anyone's saying.
Exactly, and this is what we see in the House. And I think Canadians are going to judge the opposition for their politics.
We're ready. We were ready right now. We're ready.
And we're ready to have that debate on the budget.
We are out of time, unfortunately. Thank you very much to all three of you. Good luck back in the House with the rest of the votes. I appreciate you guys taking time out for us. Thanks to Marco Mendicino, Candice, Bergen, and Daniel Blaikie. Are other things going on in the House of Commons, though, that involve this controversy? Paul, I'll start with you again. The Conservatives are trying very hard. This whole procedural thing has happened where we've seen about 24, I think, hours now, exactly 24 hours at 6:01 last night, I think it started, of voting in order to make the point and sort of force the idea that these two women should be heard from again. Do you think it's effective? I mean, the conversation we're having right now is very much focused on it.
I'm really delighted to have had to miss this whole filibuster while I concentrate on other matters. Most Canadians don't pay attention to this sort of thing. Most people on the Hill are hostage to them and have to. Throughout this thing, Andrew Scheer has kind of bet high, hasn't he? When after Jody Wilson-Raybould's testimony, Scheer came out and said the Prime Minister's got to go. A lot of people, including I think myself, said that was pretty extreme, and you know, this turns out to be the kind of issue on which it might have been a smart idea to bet high. This is turning into bigger trouble for the Liberals than it is for Andrew Scheer. And I guess I'll leave it at that. Do
you agree, Melissa, that people aren't really paying attention to what's happening on the Hill? I mean, it depends. I guess it depends where you're looking. I see lots of different feedback. People really want to hear from these two women again. There are a lot of people saying this is childish.
You know, I think you failed to mention that they're actually voting on a budget, the budget that actually nobody is talking about. So I would be livid as the Minister of Finance today if I was out pumping out measures in this budget that nobody cares about, because we are all here sitting.
Well, they're voting on supplementary estimates, and the Conservatives have voted against every single one of them, which includes funding
to veterans, fantastic. But they are there. But they are absolutely there to hold the government to account and have these two women speak. The government's shut down the Justice Committee, and this is another sort of recourse that they have at their disposal to get the truth out on SNC-Lavalin, because Canadians actually expect it.
Will it accomplish that, Brad?
I don't think that the delays in the House with all the opposition, shenanigans delaying the vote resonates. I think like the Philpott interview, I think, is going to punch through a lot more than a bunch of politicians who get paid very well have to vote all night. I mean, I think that maybe some folks that follow politics might care, but the folks at home don't. But just to talk about the power that Dr. Philpott and Jody Wilson-Raybould have over basically these two individuals who are now nothing more than government backbenchers, are setting an agenda that even I think that Scheer and the Conservatives are trying to jump on and talk about. But I don't think that the filibuster at all has anything to do with why people are at home. I think they're going to talk more about when Dr. Philpott talks about there's more stuff to come out. And the pressure on Trudeau and the Justice Committee to get those two back, or some forum for them to speak, is based more on what they're doing than what Scheer and the Tories are doing.
Does it keep it, though, Supriya? I mean, from a communications perspective, does it keep all of this in the same discussion?
Yeah, to a degree, because I think, to be fair about the situation, when you're talking about parliamentary privilege and cabinet confidence and waivers, it can get a little bit complicated, so you tend to jumble all of the issues together. But just on the whole, let her speak hashtag, and if we really want to get to the bottom of what was said to whom and when, that actually doesn't really involve another conversation or another testimony with Ms. Wilson-Raybould. What it involves is getting the staffers to appear and get their side of the story, because some of the most explosive elements to Ms. Wilson-Raybould's testimony was essentially, from an evidentiary standpoint, hearsay. She was reporting on what she had heard from her then chief of staff, and ditto for Mr. Butts when he was talking about meetings that he had not actually been present for.
And she also, the only thing I would add is that she did say in a letter to her constituents that she had more to say, just like we heard from Jane Philpott. But again, no specifics there, just that she had more to say. Okay.